That ball joint is shot. That needs replaced. So every other time I've done all the rust and dirt. This suspension is going to ride like a wagon. Yep, let's take it for a drive. Alright, welcome back to the channel. So we are finally back out here working on the truck. It's been all winter. So what we're doing today is we are replacing the front axle. So we got the axle just from some guy off of Facebook Marketplace. We are changing out the axle that's on this with a 96 Dana 60 solid front end. We ended up getting the front and the rear axle for 400 bucks, and we just finished rebuilding the front axle. The F250 from, I think it's like 87 up until 97 or even older than that, came with the twin torsion beam Dana 50. This is not a good diff at all. One of the issues is there's an extra U-joint, but with the leaf springs, it's an incredibly harsh ride, and they all pivot off of this, and typically these end up bending and breaking, and then you don't have a true axle. Another thing that you'll run into with these is when you turn sharp, one of the tires will drag, usually the outside one, and it's really bad if you're turning in reverse and you lock the tire and it skips. And so what we are wanting to do is just get rid of this because it's a garbage design, and put on a solid axle. Alright, so the first things that we're going to do is loosen up all the bolts. The next thing we're going to do is take off the drive shaft, take the tires off, and jack the vehicle. What we're going to start off with is taking each arm of the diff off at a time, and then we're going to take off each leaf at a time. That'll just be the easiest. There are two mounts that go up into the engine cradle that we have to take off. That's probably going to be the hardest part. So we might have to jack up the motor. Last time I took them out, I had to cut them out. So we'll see about that. Kind of depends on how bad the motor mounts are. And then putting everything back together, just opposite. We're going to put on the leaves first. The diff is still actually taken apart. We have a bin right back here with all the spindles, and the steering knuckles. It's all taken apart, so it should be easier to get in. Then we're going to lift that up onto it and build the diff while it's on the truck. I think that's probably going to be the easiest thing for me to do. But yeah, the next step is taking off the drive shaft. Oh, that needs replaced.
What is it?
That's the U-joint. Should not be like that. So I've never had this drive shaft off, and the caps on the T-case side fell off unbelievably easy. And this thing is kind of loose. It was alright, it wasn't the worst, but this one is totally shot. There's like a dead spot in the bearing, so if you look, it just, right here, it doesn't want to roll past without being forced. And then it just, there's like a little section here that doesn't feel like there's proper bearings. And I roll these, it does the same thing. Actually, I can't roll that one back. Yeah, totally dry and crushed rollers in there. So yeah, this U-joint was definitely shot. Yeah, this one has dirt in it. Just look at this. It's all pitted and there's mud in there. So this drive shaft needed to be rebuilt. Okay, and now for the tires. You know what I am not going to miss about this diff? Is picking up on it. Because it's independent arms, if I pick up on one, it doesn't lift up the whole thing. Okay, so part of our motivation to do this axle swap now is this axle needs rebuilt, and I wasn't about to waste money on rebuilding this axle that I'm going to get rid of. So we've had a lot of shaking going on, so I wonder how bad it actually is. It's not terrible on this side, but it is definitely wriggling quite a bit. Yeah. Bearings are needing to be replaced, like I suspect. Oh yeah, this side's quite a bit worse. So this side looks like it's the bearings in there. The other side, it was the bottom ball joint that was gone. So yeah, more than enough time passed since these need rebuilt. That ball joint is shot. It's not the bearings. Next step is to take the brakes off because we are reusing them. We're gonna put them, tie them up to the shock mount. Gotta take the shocks off. The steering linkage, I'm probably just going to take it off of the pitman arm and just leave it attached here. I think it will be the easiest. I did forget to bring a gear puller, so we'll see how easy it is to take out of that pitman arm. It might end up being ground out. And then after that, I've loosened all 4 U-bolts, so that'll be the last thing. And what's really annoying about this diff is it has to come down as one, but at the same time it separates, and so you're constantly fighting with the two halves wanting to not work together. And you do have to have a jack under it. So what's likely going to end up happening is we're going to put something up under here to hold this side up, to let the other side drop down, get the bolt out, and it's not a fun axle to work on. Okay, so one thing I can say about working on this, it is a little scary to crawl under there with all this weight. Like, you have to crawl under there. The only thing holding this truck up where all the weight is now are these two jacks. So loosen everything so that it's almost finger tight. Then you don't really have to crawl under there and really wrench on things. It's the safest practice in my opinion. I don't have to lay under there for an extended period of time. On the next axle we're putting on, they're designed to be smiley face or flat. So it should actually lift the truck a bit.
Well, that's always a good thing.
Yeah, it is. The brakes are stuck on there, which isn't normal. What the heck? Oh, what in the actual? I've never seen a piston like that. It's very corroded. Pushing on the shock is like non-existent.
It's stuck?
Yeah. I need to grab my big pry bar from over by the garden. Okay, now that the brakes and the shocks are off, the next part is less than easy. There really is no good way to do it. Either start with the U-bolts or start with the center bolt holding the axle to the mount. Every other time I've done it, I've taken it off of the leaves, and then I've always fought to get this bolt out of this bracket, so I'm gonna try to reverse this a little bit and see if it's any easier. Now that axle's ready to come down. But if you see, and you might have to go over to here, but this shaft, this axle shaft goes in here, so even though this will drop, it has to get pulled out of the diff. And so that can be quite difficult sometimes if it binds up in there because it gets caught up behind this arm. It's not a fun axle to take apart. It's even less fun to put it back together. Man, I love this jack. It's just so fast.
All the bolts on there look like in such rough shape.
They are in such rough shape.
Like, honestly.
All the rust and
all
dirt
the
that's
all
in
the
there.
crap and everything.
But yeah, it's pretty rough. It's really stuck. Alright then.
What's plan B?
So every other time I've done it pulls right out.
Yes! That was so professional.
If it works, it works.
Does this need clean?
Yeah.
All the yucky jobs you give to me.
You're good at them.
Well, I guess I'm not skilled enough to do anything besides
clean things?
Yeah. Oh! No!
This jack isn't doing anything. This might fall at any time, by the way. So it is considerably lighter than that one. So now that the axles are off, the next steps is just kind of finishing taking the last bits off. Tie rods, leaf springs, these center mounts, and that'll give us room to put on the handheld bar mount. The leaf springs are freaking heavy compared to those ones. This suspension is known to ride like a wagon. How rough it is.
Do you need a girl to come help you?
Okay, are you ready to see this come down?
Yes, sir.
Okay, watch out.
How heavy are they? Do you figure?
Freaking heavy.
It's like, they're as heavy as I am. Let me see, I wanna see. That's even heavy for me still.
That's light compared to the other one.
Is this?
Half, like half the weight. Yeah. Okay, take this bolt and put it into the hole. Go.
Okay, I need the hammer thing.
No, you don't.
No?
Not use the hammer, also you'll mess up the threads.
Threads. You know what would suck?
Oh, it sucks.
If we were putting those leaves on instead of these leaves.
Oh, that would be like next to impossible. One side, these springs are on. Whew.
I think you're just exaggerating.
Oh, shut up.
All done?
Yeah, let's take it for a drive. Okay, so what I'm about to do now is put the axle up onto the leaves. I have to skip a step. So right now, I still have the 2 brackets on for the pivot joint for the old axle. You can easily get 4 of the bolts off. The other 4 are not so easy. So what the issue is they are in a recessed section of the engine girdle, and you can't get a socket in there because the oil pan's about this far away, so you have to get a wrench in there, and you have no way to hold the wrench and push it down. It's really difficult. It's hard to get them, so the best thing to do is just cut them off if you're never going to use them again. That is definitely the hardest part of this entire job, is getting those 4 bolts out. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is putting the axle on. I got all the bolts tightened up off camera, but now I need to get those mounts out. Got my grinder. It does fit in there, but a Sawzall will also work. So we're just going to cut this off and then put the Panhard bar mount on there with the Panhard bar. After that, we're going to start on with putting the steering knuckles back on, the shocks, and then I'll get the brakes on. We'll be pretty close to being done at that point. Okay, so these are the 2 mounts, there's left and right. Typically, every other time I've taken these off in a lot of vehicles that I've looked at pick and pull, these typically break right here and start bending, or this bends out. And once you do that, the arm isn't being held up right. And that's where you can see that the tire is at quite a sharp angle. I had one truck where it was this side, the arm was broken, it was being held by 1 bolt at the top, and it had bent this whole thing, and when you would back up, it would pull it out and the tire would come and almost hit the frame. It was bending up so much. So if you're having issues with the old axle and the tire's not aligning properly, it is almost 100% this. My recommendation would be to don't waste any money with the old piece of crap Dana 50, just save up and buy this. It is better in every regard. Okay, so the next thing I'm doing is just rebuilding the axle a little bit. You could have done this prior to putting it on the truck. Just having all this weight off made it a lot easier. So I'm just putting on this steering knuckle. But yeah, this is pretty straightforward. So it comes up from the bottom. Top one is 70 to 75 foot-pounds. Bottom one is 100 to 110 foot-pounds. So the axle is going to go in, and then we're going to put all the bearings and the rotor on and start with the brakes. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do, now that this is all on, is put on the Panhard bar mount. This is absolutely necessary. I looked up quite a few threads online. Some people are saying no, you don't need it. Some people, yes, you absolutely need it. It stops any death wobble from going on. So of course, this being a F250 never came with one, or the Panhard bar, and this axle didn't have it either. So I got this from PMF Suspension along with the Panhard bar. You know what, let me grab that. So this is the adjustable Panhard bar from PMF Suspension as well. Build quality seems pretty good. 2 things I'm a little bit disappointed with it. It doesn't come with any of the hardware or even tell you what size the holes are drilled at. So I had to take this in to a few stores to find the right sizes for this bolt and these 3 bolts. That's one thing that I find a little bit annoying with it. Other than that, they seem like they're pretty good. So you can see where the mount goes. There's a bunch of holes back here, and it's just gonna go on something like that. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is, like I said, putting the axle together. Just got to clean off the old grease still. Putting it together is pretty simple. You do have to have a special socket, which I will show that socket as soon as we get to that step. But yeah, this is how we're starting it. So this is the socket that you need. If you look, this is the only way to get it off is with these 4 posts. I picked this up from our local car parts store. It's 2.5 inch. This is absolutely necessary. So this first one that goes on is hand tight. The next one that goes on is torqued to spec, but there's a bunch of different components to it. This goes into that peg. If you look on the inside, there's another ridge right here, and that has to line up with the key that was cut on the spindle. Next are a couple of shims, and then the last nut that gets torqued down. Okay, Leah, what's the next step?
Putting the tires on?
No.
No? What?
Well, we have a shock to put on, we have the brakes to put on, we have the tie rods to put on, we also have to put on the Panhard bar. So yeah, brakes next, then shocks. There's a few things that you need to make this axle work. One of them is these leaves, obviously. You can't use the Dana 50 leaves. that came on this truck. You have to get the panhard bar. Depending on the year of axle and the year of the truck, you might have to switch your brake caliper. The Dana 60 can turn a lot sharper than the Dana 50. So another thing that you need to get if you want to use all the steering range is you need to get a new pitman arm. And the F350s have a much longer pitman arm, and that lets you steer more. And I've heard it's about half a turn to 3/4 of a steering wheel turn more with the F350 pitman arm. I don't have it. I'm gonna have to go and find one. So right now I'm just using the old one that was on the truck, so I won't be able to use the full steering range of this. That is certainly gonna be something I want to upgrade to or replace to the proper one in the near future, because getting this extra turning radius would be awesome. And yeah, it's kind of one of the things that makes it so much better than that old Dana 50. Dropping it down. Okay, so the question is, did it lift it any? Yes, it did. There was only about an inch, maybe even a little bit less of an inch between the top of the leaf spring and the bump stop, and now...
We're measuring now, are we?
Yes. Now we're at 3 inches, so we probably gained about 2.5 inches. Okay, so now that we have the tires down, I obviously need to torque everything. Now that we have it on its own weight, now it's time to put this in. It's pretty simple. These are the lock nuts. Put it in there and spin it to where it's roughly even. Tighten these up, and it'll be good to go. All right, so we are pretty much done. Just gotta torque down a few things, fill up the diff with oil, and then we're gonna take it for a test drive. But thanks for watching. It was actually pretty easy. The hardest part is definitely getting those mounts out. Other than that, it's pretty quick. So like and subscribe, more videos to come. Likely in the near future, we're gonna be doing bearings, but we're gonna be putting that test drive video on our Instagram, link to that in the bottom.